All right, we live. What up? All right, so today we're taking a trip into the world of economic theories and facts. The topic is the Great Reset. Myth, fact, or both? Hey, let's play that intro, y'all.
Concrete reality.
So, welcome to another episode of Concrete Reality TV, where we strive to know more and do more with what we know. I'm El from Acapella.
I am King Cool Cutter.
I am author Danelle Wright.
OG2 in the building.
And the infamous K Fred.
We in here.
We in here, man. So, as always, we ask our panelists where they stand on the topic at hand, which is, I know, the Great Reset. Myth, fact, or both? Let's start with Gillum. Gillum is, I know you ain't really, touch on this heavy, hard research, but for what it's worth, the Great Reset, myth, fact, or both?
Well, we've talked about this before, so it's a little bit of both. The myth is that
No.
Okay, both. I got it. Go.
Okay, Fred, where you stand on this? Great Reset, man. Myth.
Hey, I'm gonna run with OG. I'm gonna go both.
All right. What up, Danelle? You standing where?
I'm gonna have to go with. I'm gonna go with fact.
Okay, so we on facts. So, Cutter, you rounding this thing up? Where you standing?
I'm facts. I'm facts on this one, bro.
All right, so
yeah,
straight facts. With me, I usually have a drop. I ain't got one today. So, but I stand on both. It's both. So, okay, I'm gonna let you know right up front, viewers. In order to understand what this Great Reset is, we're gonna have to touch on some primary subtopics and historical events, then work our way back to our primary topic. So we're going to start with the understanding of value in money. That's going to be a good one. Then we'll touch on a few key topics or key economic events in the history of the U.S. that led up to our present economic state. Our tour guide on this journey into the world of economics will be our extremely knowledgeable in-house financial advisor, Mr. K. Fred.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's going to guide us on this damn thing.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So let's get it cracking, man. K Fred, you ready to go ahead and start this thing?
Hey, man, let's go ahead and get it cracking.
Okay, cool. So step one, what the hell is money? This thing, man. What the hell are we doing here? What is money?
Are we talking about money or are we talking about currency?
Let's start with money. Well, actually, start with currency because I remember we touched on that before. So what is currency?
Well, let's look at the key word. You have current, which is the energy that you put into something every day when you go to work. You put your energy into it. The sea goes back to maritime admiralty law. It's the law of the sea. So currency is the energy you put into creating what we would call your GNP or your GDP, gross domestic product. Products, goods, and services, right? Money, something totally different. It's a medium of exchange. So I'm gonna leave it right there for you, Ephraim.
Okay, cool. So we understand what money is. What about value? What is this? How does it get its value? Because I know we touched on that, but can you kind of dig on that a little bit?
So I would say the value is placed by the person that's willing to buy it. So if you tell me that you got a pair of shoes and you want to tell me, hey, these are 400, like for some Jordans, and I'm willing to pay it, then the minute I pay it, I've given it its value. Now you can ask me for it all day long, but that doesn't mean it has value unless you're willing to pay for it. Goes back to supply and demand.
So now we got what money is. We got currency. We got a little bit about this value thing. So value comes from us, the person, the people that that are willing to put forth some sort of, I don't know, purchase. We're the ones.
Monetary things toward it. Yeah.
So, but we don't. Well, let's imagine we don't have any money yet, any currency, but yet we want to obtain what someone has because we value that thing.
Then you have to give them something they value, so you can have a fair exchange.
So we're touching on bartering.
Yeah. So, bartering and trade.
Okay. So bartering and trade. So we're going with that. We kind of touched on this. I want to move forward a little bit because I don't want to spend too much time. I just wanted to kind of get everybody's mindset into this understanding of value and money and where it comes from, because I think that's a major part of understanding why we do what we do, how these things have some sort of worth when they don't intrinsically have any actual amount attached to them. We give the value to them. So it comes from us. We value it, and we're willing to basically, obtain it by various means that are available to us. And then we'll leave it at that. We're gonna move forward because I don't want to stay on that too much. I want to go into the history a little bit. So I want to get on this United States history a little bit. So I'm gonna share the screen. I usually have my drops. You got no drops this time. We're gonna have to go to old school share screen. And I guess we'll start with the history of money in the US. So I guess I'll go to, and I picked a certain point. I was trying to figure out what point in the history of the United States economic system that I want to go by. And I figured, hey, why not start at the Federal Reserve? So we'll start at the Federal Reserve. 1913. So we got the Federal Reserve Act, 1913. The Federal Reserve Act of 1913 establishes the Federal Reserve as the nation's central bank and provides for a national banking system that is more responsive to the fluctuating financial needs of the country. The Federal Reserve Board issues new currency called Federal Reserve Notes. All right. So I pinpointed another impactful moment. I'll probably go to 1944. And in 1944, let me see if I got it pulled up. Give me a second. (1944). I wonder if it'll come up. So 1944, I don't have that one, but basically it's the Bretton Woods Conference. Delegates from 44 allied countries met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire in 1944 to come up with a system to manage foreign exchange that would not disadvantage any country. The delegation decided that the world's currencies would no longer be linked to gold, but could be pegged to the US dollar. That's because the greenback was itself linked to gold. That's why they used to say the dollar was as good as gold. That was in 1944. Though.
Learn something new every day.
Yes,
That's
sir.
right.
Yes, sir. So, before I move forward, K-Fred, you want to touch on any of that? Give any kind of extra?
Oh man, that's huge. Because if you look at the Great Depression and what they did, and what was it? When was it the Depression? Right around 1933, I believe. So that's when they, if I'm not mistaken, began issuing what we call security numbers, right? So they didn't have to be gold back anymore because they used the people as collateral for the debt. And then what they did later on is they assigned it over to what they call the petrodollar, which was their deal with Saudi Arabia, which is what we go by now, which is what's leading us into the topic that we're at hand, which is the global reset, right? What happens when fiat money, which is the dollar bills in your pocket, when that goes bye-bye, when that's no
Right.
longer in. Right now, you'll see, I think it was Executive Order 1406, something like that, that he just dropped, President Biden, for the US's own digital currency. Now, the debate around that, which goes back to some states like Texas, okay, Florida is another one, is they don't want Big Brother monitoring your financial transactions. That means they, by a hit of a button, they can turn your money off or on, right? And so Texas is looking to have their own gold back cryptocurrency that they can buy and sell and trade with. And so I think you got maybe here in June or July, I think is when it's set to really begin. So what do you do when you have no more fiat currency? And then the question is, what do they do with the trillions in debt? And where did that debt come from? What are they going to do with that?
So also when the dollar bill was backed by gold, it gave it some value because as you just showed us in history, that it's just a note. It's just basically a promise to pay with services or goods. But if you take the gold value out of it, what really is it backed by? Where's the value coming from?
You.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying, like when you're talking about the dollar bill, the value and the especially when you're talking about the Great Reset, I'm just really wondering if people are getting that concept. Like, first off, the money that we value that we're saying that is going to be turned off really doesn't have the value. It's in us anyway.
Right.
So we're going to back up a little bit because I wanted to touch on something regarding the events that took place in the 60s and the 70s. So I'm going to go back a little bit in history because I want to kind of touch on that just to make sure the viewers and ourselves are aware of what took place. So hold on a second. All right, so if you can see, we talked about that Bretton Woods conference that took place in 1944. That's where other nations signed to peg their currencies to the US dollar. And then something took place right before we get to 1971, 1963. I don't have it pulled up, but you can always Google it. Currency and gold. Congress prohibits the redemption of currency for gold. So they already started in 1963 because they were no longer redeeming your dollars for gold. That stopped in 1963. Now we move forward in 1971. As you can see, it says, nevertheless, U.S. President Richard Nixon withdrew the dollar from the gold standard, which is what you were referring to, Danelle, on August 15, 1971, because of stagflation. So what that, well, I'm going to let Kay, because I know he's going to eat that up. In 1973, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries surged oil pricing with a brief time span. So the petrodollar started at the same time because they had to back it by something. And they used what we call petrodollar. I'm going to let you dig into there, K. Fred, because I know it's a lot of meat on that bone.
So I mean, that part right there was huge, right? If we understand history, because that deal, who are your main oil producers around the world? And of course, Saudi Arabia is one of the main ones. They supply oil to all over the world. And so what it did was it created a standard that said, hey, if another country wants to buy oil, right, they can't buy it in their currency. They have to buy it in USD. And so that's where the United States dollar became the dominant currency, even if you're in Forex trading, right? Everything's paired against USD. It's the dominant currency. So with this new shift with the BRIC, right, that alliance between Russia, China, Venezuela, and some of the other countries, right, they're going against and they're trying to now take away that petrodollar, okay, and now buy oil or have oil backed by a new currency, pushing the yuan, which is the Chinese currency, and they're talking about doing it gold back. Now you put in the African nations, which that's a whole nother topic, because my man over in Uganda, he ain't having it. You know what I'm saying? With him and Biden at war over this whole LGBTQ thing. So he told him, look, we taking our resources and we going over to China too, right? And so this swing in power that's happening right now, if your dollar's not backed by anything and they move away from the petrodollar, that's the only thing technically giving the dollar its value, is the use of it around the world. Now, credits and debits, you can't have credit without debt, and you can't have debt without credit, right? And so we become a debt system. Okay, so our money technically has no value. That's why they call it fiat. So if this shift happens, which they're pushing for, this is going to be huge, because you're watching the value of the dollar on a slow decline.
So meaning, or basically meaning that once you leave out of the United States, your money is no good.
Well, even in the United States, your money will be no good. I mean, just imagine $100 being now worth $5.
Wow.
Right.
It was like during World War I, World War II, Britain and Germany, man, they were running around with cash money, burning it to stay warm, because their economy wasn't worth shit at the time. You know what I mean? So history tends to repeat itself, and America's been sitting at a superpower based on something that they don't have any backing to, right? And the only thing that they're depending on is the people to keep pushing products, goods, and services. But the other side of it, back in the 90s, they opened up this whole free trade. So that took away what? GDP, gross domestic product, what we're producing as a country. So if we're not producing from industry, right, like the Industrial Revolution was intended, you have no more factories. That's Ohio, that's Cleveland, that's full Midwest, right? And then you're not really exporting agriculture anymore from the South, because now they've allowed free trade to come in. So China, all these other countries can dump products here, right? And then they use us as the guinea pigs, and we use our dollar to buy their products versus not producing our own. So this whole debted system that we're in, and then they're raising the debt ceiling, because every time they print money, and if you go back to that air from the Federal Reserve, people think that because it's named federal, that it's owned by the US, and it's not. It's a private organization, okay? And they charge the US in order to print money. So every time they're printing money, the higher the interest rate for the old money in circulation, and that's why they try to get it out of circulation. It's number one. Number two, they're still charging a full value plus interest for any new money that's printed. So look at all the money that was printed during COVID, right? All the free money they were giving out. So.
Dang. Wow. So
if we're not producing, and most of the goods that we like to live off of is coming from other countries, when our dollar has no value, then we basically go bankrupt, and our lifestyle changes in every way.
In every way. And I'm gonna tell you,
everything that we eat, everything that we own, then we become like those third world countries.
That's right. And here's a code one that they did, because we have a lot that we can quote unquote export, and energy is one of them, right? And so you remember that whole deal with that pipeline that President Trump had approved, right? That whole pipeline that was running through. And then when Biden came in office, what did he do? He shut down the pipeline, right? And normally we can provide energy to Europe, during their winters. He shut that down too. So it's almost like an intentional collapse, when you look at some of the economic policies, the propaganda that they push on TV, through the news media. I mean, most of those are singularly owned by one company or one brokerage. But if you get into reading the executive orders that a president puts out, you know what I mean? Look at these bills, man. Read that stuff. Just like the new one that they got, which is going to affect you as well, that whole TikTok ban, right? It wasn't about TikTok. TikTok, if you read the bill, is nowhere in the bill. You know what I'm saying? They're talking about monitoring platforms like this. And if they're not in agreement with something that you say that you do, it gives them full rights to all of your digital. all of your social media, all of your Facebook, all of your emails, all of your search engines, right? It's another, intentional violation into controlling the American population, man. This is cold. And what better way do you control them than economically? If I move to a digital currency, Ephraim, that means you have no more black market stuff, right? So there's no more prostitution, there's no more drug dealing, there's no more illegal things. Now, here's the other part. That affects who? The cartel. Because the cartel keeps most of their money in what? USD.
Right.
So you're talking about, man, a whole war on both sides that's playing out right now in front of the American people. And it's unfortunate because they're too concerned with, who's the next NFL or what LeBron James is doing or Patrick Mahomes, you know what I mean? Or what's the next concert? What's the next way of entertainment? Because the Hollywood's got them, it's got them mesmerized, you know what I'm saying, like Mickey and Fantasia. So they're missing the whole economic downturn of our economy.
And Fred, one of the things that I wanted to say too is you're talking about how we pay so much attention to all the things that they try to keep us distracted with. And a lot of the times what we don't realize is those people that are planning all of this take advantage of tragedy. They capitalize on tragedy. When the stock market goes down and all the shares are low, what do? They buy because they know eventually it's going to come back up. At the end of the day, they take advantage of tragedy. And that's when all of this stuff started to be talked about again with the Great Reset and things like that. And that's what's really scary about it, is the control that would be given in this Great Reset is trying to be presented to the world as, oh, we're going to be worried about more socialism and making sure that everybody has equality and everybody has food and things like that. But the one thing that stood out to me when I did a little research on it was, you will own nothing, but you will be happy. Wait a minute. If I own nothing, that means I have no rights. There is no freedom there. That means I don't have a decision to make control. So just like you were saying, Fred, if I do something that upsets the power at B, then everything that I thought that was mine is not mine. They can take that away. That's
Bingo.
Just like everybody living on a welfare system.
Bingo. And technically, it's not yours now anyway. Even though we own homes, right? What do? Every year you have to pay what? The
Taxes.
Personal property tax?
Right.
Right. It don't matter if your home is paid for and it has no lien or encumbrances, you're still paying what?
Paying taxes.
Taxes. Okay. Now the IRS, that's another one. You know what I'm saying? Not owned by the federal government. It's an individual agency. I think it goes back, man, to understanding, and Danelle, you hit on something when you said you buy low, right, and you sell when it's high. This is the market, and this is money. This is economics, because they're trading different things every day. So the things that you utilize, the things that Black people utilize in their economy, they love to put it into the consumer part of the economy. But what if you invest in Nike versus buying the Jordans? You know what I mean? There's energy funds. I mean, there's small cap funds. There's all types. You can invest in commodities and coffee. You want to be at Starbucks? I mean, yeah, you can invest in Starbucks, but I can also invest in coffee. And I think the market runs every day on many different levels. They're trading Forex. They're trading options. They're trading futures. They got EFTs. Your little 401ks that most general people have. Those are still built up of what the market's doing every day. So as a savvy investor with a diversified portfolio, understanding that money is not just the medium of exchange, that fiat dollar bill, but the money is in the assets. And what are assets, right? Those are things that you can own, like land and houses, right? Even patents, inventions. These are all things that if somebody decides to buy it, it gives it what? Value. You see? And that's basically all the market is saying, is that if I've got an iPhone, and let's say that iPhone 14, 15, 21, whatever it is, if it's a hot item and everybody wants it, then that means the demand is high. If the demand is high, what does that do to the price? It pushes it up. Now, if nobody wants the iPhone because it's shitty, then what do? The demand is down, which means the price is down, right? And so that's the way it works, supply and demand. Understanding that and watching your economy, watching your housing market, right? And then there's certain ways you conduct yourself with money, how you spend your money. Most people have been programmed to be consumers, but investors, rich people, they're always looking to take their money and leverage it. I can leverage it for OPM, other people's money, right? So how do you, in this day and age, with this quote unquote reset coming, how do you protect yourself, right? What's your next move? What are you learning about? If you know things are going digital, are you into digital currency? Are you researching what a wallet is or EFT and all this terminology that they use to describe the crypto world on blockchain and Ethereum? What is blockchain? Bitcoin was never about the coin itself, okay? The Bitcoin they're using as kind of a product to determine what's a medium of exchange in a digital world, okay? What you're giving value to, because it's not backed by anything. It's just the fact that people started buying it, and guess what they were trading it for?
US dollars.
US dollar. And what has value? The US dollar. So that's what gave Bitcoin its value, was the medium of exchange and using the dollar to buy it. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so it became kind of a digital playing field now that they can play on. So then they come up with all types of other coins. Well, we've got coins that represent gold and platinum and minerals. We've got coins like XRP, which will be like the new SWIFT system. That's how they shift money. So when you go to your bank, you get a SWIFT number. Well, XRP is going to be the new SWIFT system on the digital platform. So where are you at in learning all of this when you see it shifting and it's moving that way, right? It was never about Bitcoin, brother. It was about blockchain. Because blockchain means that it's transcripted in its own code. Every transaction has a code that's unique to that. So it can't be duplicated. You know what I mean? It's hard to create fraud with it. And that's why the blockchain system became so prevalent for them to now transact on digitally.
So question, why do you think that the Great Reset is both myth and fact?
Well, because I think there's myths around what people think is going to happen, right? And versus what's actually happening, okay? They're always going to, and they've done this before, you're going to reset the value. And I'm trying to explain this without going into some of like your bigger boys, like BlackRock. What do they invest in? Most people have never heard of them. What do they own? What do they do?
Right.
Fidelity. Fidelity holds trillions in assets, right? Fidelity's been in the cryptocurrency for a minute. I think since 2014, they were mining Bitcoin. So they've already been prepared, man. They're just creating a ship. You just saw JP Morgan Chase come up with its own digital currency, right? Everything is moving that way. Bitcoin was just a pilot program.
So what do you think is the myth? What do you think that most think that a lot of people are saying is going to happen that you think is the myth? Because when you mentioned BlackRock, and I'm glad that you brought that up, I saw that when I was doing some reading and stuff into the whole myth and stuff like that of the Great Reset. And one of the things that I started to notice when I was researching BlackRock is that they are buying up a lot of properties in single family home areas and things like that. And they take advantage, especially after a tragedy or a natural disaster. And especially it increased after COVID.
Oh, wait a minute. They just wrote off, I think it was like 1.3 trillion in real estate assets, right? Now, for smaller investors that see that, well, if they selling off, what do you think they're doing? That's $1 trillion that you can buy up. They're the ones that hold the holdings for most of the media companies. I mean, if you look into a Vanguard, that's another good one. These are some of your big boys. They're never going to collapse. They got trillions in assets. All they have to figure out is, how do I convert those over into this new value and what's going to be the medium of exchange.
So
So
question.
do you feel that they're not trying, I'm sorry, do you feel like they're not trying to implement the whole you own nothing but you'll be happy agenda?
Well, put it like this. If your money's worth nothing and that's all you have of value, right? Now, I buy gold because I like gold. Gold is, in the market, gold keeps a nice price. It's right, probably about 65,000 for a kilo right now, right? So, I mean, I like gold. Gold's always held its value no matter what. And if all the other countries are still going gold back, then, gold's possibly an asset that I would hold on to. And I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice in any way. Disclaimer. But I like gold. That's my personal preference. I also like certain cryptocurrencies, stable coins, it just depends, man. Like I said, have a diversified portfolio. But if everything falls, then you're on welfare anyway, if your money's worth nothing. So you'll have a new social system, which goes back to the social credit score.
Hey, question. So I want to, because y'all touching exactly where I wanted to go with this, a few questions just for the laymen, us folks that are still trying to understand a lot of these terms and concepts with, let's go back to CBDC. So what does that stand for?
Pull it up, Ephraim. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, well, basically, I'm going to pull it up real quick. So CBDC is central bank digital currency. And it's what y'all were touching on a little earlier with that. I was going to ask you with this central banking digital currency, if they did go to that, I noticed that it doesn't mean that the dollar goes away. It could also be existing alongside of it, of the actual paper dollar for a time period. They may not transition fully towards that digital currency for obvious reasons. Usually they do it in steps. Did y'all have any questions on, I guess, the effects of how that would impact the society with having a central digital currency?
Well, you know what's so crazy right now? We use digital currency right now. Who carry cash on the panel? Like who carry cash all the time? We use our debit card. So that's a variation of digital currency already because we use our debit card for everything. I don't remember last time I had $1 in my pocket.
Yeah, me neither. I was thinking about that with that, but you did bring up something, K. Fred. I thought about if with the underground sector of society, like those transactions, the strippers. You ain't know you're gonna be making it rain no more. What we gonna do, man? What's going on? The strippers.
Hey, man,
the price. That means the price of P goes down.
You're gonna make it rain with digital currency. You're just gonna just hit the button. It's gonna go.
No, listen, they just gonna tell you to scan their cash app. That's all. They already doing that.
That's what I was thinking about.
So no, wait a minute. But watch this, because here's the new one. If you Google Fed Now, okay. Now Fed Now, if I'm not mistaken, they kind of reared their head right around COVID. But everything is gonna run through Fed Now. Remember I said they will have access, man.
Yeah, they get ready to get rid of the cash app and all that. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God! Well, wait a minute. Didn't you see his ass got stabbed?
Yeah, I heard about.
Did you see his ass got stabbed in San
Yep.
And he didn't live there. He was visiting.
Hey, all those dudes that started digital currency companies, something happened to them tragically.
Hey,
allegedly.
Man, then did you see all the deaths of the crypto millionaires?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey man, I'm just saying.
The government is taking over. It's called Fed Now, and they say that's going to be all Cash App, Zillow, all those things will be gone. You have to run through straight government agencies.
Okay, so basically they're hijacking it just like they did marijuana.
Yeah,
Right.
they hijacking it. They want their money.
They come take it. That's what they do. They come take it.
Come and take it. That's
You don't want to be our business partner, so we gonna take it all.
Yeah.
So you have to understand that the value is in the basic needs of the people. Like if we are dependent on somebody for our housing, for our security, like the basic needs, like what we're going to eat and things like that, if they have control to give that and take that away, then we're not really free anyway. We're just basically living off of their grace and mercy because they can take it away at any time. So how do we get to a point where we take that power back? Like you were saying, K. Fred, invest in something that is tradable in other countries, like the gold or things like that. But also our basic needs, like we need to start thinking more long term, like, am I going to have water? Am I going to have food? Can I, like, look, do I need to dig a well on my property? Like, do I need to grow my own food? Like, come on, we got to be more resourceful in our own abilities.
Well, and think about this. Here's what's funny about that, though. And I love that you bring that up because, you know, we talk about our white brothers, you know what I mean? But yeah, are they too far off? You know what I'm saying? Because they ready in the land, you know, but you're going to have a vast majority of people that live in the city. So what happens if the power grid goes out? Just saying. What happens if they loot all of the grocery stores and then everything stops like COVID, right? And then you have limited food supply. I mean, man, this depending on the levels, if they don't carry this in the right way, I mean, you can see the doomsday because they talk about it. I don't know. Ephraim, you know, we talk about that often. You know what I'm saying about the whole conspiracy thing. But I know back in 1993, I had a document that talked about them issuing debit cards with your face on it. That was in 93. And so when it came out, I'm sitting there going, man, yeah. Or when I went to work on airplanes, right? And I found out that the stealth bomber was built in the 60s, in the early 70s. They didn't drop that until what, the 80s, 90s? So their technology is always ahead. Their financial system is always ahead. Who's the IMF, Ephraim?
The IMF, what is that? Is that International Monetary Fund?
Come on, talk to me. Yeah, yeah, those are big boys right there. You know, who controls the money around the world? Who decides what country is going to get loans and bailed out, right? You know, money's deeper than just what we look at from our regular consumer mind. You know what I mean? Because we go to work like little drones in a beehive, you know, or ants in a colony. But there's a queen always at the top. And there's a system that's been put in place that if you're not aware of how it's moving, you're going to get lost in it and you'll be considered, you know, a casualty of it economically. You understand what I'm saying? And the economic part affects your health and your spiritual well-being. I'm just saying, I don't care what you say, what religion you are, you ain't never going to be happy if you ain't got no money.
So
and you ain't gonna never have no money if you don't never own nothing.
Yep, which is what we're leading to. So few questions. We're gonna hit a quick round because I know we're winding down a little bit, but we're in good timing. Appreciate you guys staying with us. I mean, this has been interesting. So we're gonna move on to a few questions. What does a great reset, aka the devaluation of the US dollar, mean for lower and middle class folks, which Black folks primarily fall into?
All I could think about is that movie. What is that? You know, where they had to live in their different colonies and they was given rations. They had to be assigned different jobs.
Like
they didn't get paid. Huh?
Was it Hunger Games?
Hunger Games?
Yes, yeah. that's the only thing I can think about when I hear this whole concept is the Hunger Games.
Oh, that and what was that with Jason? Was Justin Timberlake? Was that when the time was the currency? When they used to have to go to work to earn their time, and once their time ran out, that was it.
Or that one movie Wednesday where they all had those little scanner things and they went to their job and they had to get passes to go from one place to the next. Like when everything is ran by the government, they have the ability to control everything. The rules are ran by them. So that means that when they say nobody owns anything, that means that all the people making all the rules are the ones that own everything.
Oh yeah.
Well, because
Carlin had
going
a
back
bit
to
about this a while back about the fact that you really don't have rights; you have temporary privileges.
True.
That's just
Okay, Fred, you were saying something too?
well, no, back to what you would ask, what would happen? You know, what I see is a social system, and this, you know, you got these Marxists, you know what I mean, and there's a social system, and if everybody's on the same playing field economically, because you know you don't have nothing else, you're broke, um, then there's your global welfare system. You know what I mean? There's your global healthcare system. You see, um, the devaluation of the dollar is not just going to affect us; it's going to affect other countries. You know what I'm saying? So this is where like the dominoes just begin to fall,
right.
and you're going to have these other boys on the other side because remember, it's supply and demand. And if I could demand, um, there's a demand for minerals and resources. Okay, as we move forward. Okay, bauxite is what they make aluminum out of. That grows out of Africa, right? A lot of gold runs out of Africa. You know, Mali. You know what I mean? Moving down south. Um, we all know diamonds. You know, Africa's full of resources. Okay, so that whole shift with them joining into the BRIC is huge because money is going to be based on resources. What do you have that you can provide that other people can do what? Buy. And so if America is not producing anything, because look, Monsanto done came in, we got GMO everything, right? And some of the stuff that we consume here in the US, they don't even consume in Europe. It's banned.
You touched on the BRIC. I know a lot of people don't know what that stands for. That's the acronym, began as a somewhat optimistic term to describe what were the world's fastest growing economies at the time. But now the BRICS nations, which are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are setting themselves up as an alternative to existing international financial and political forums. So that's what, when you hear people say BRICS, that just means those up and coming nations that are supposed to be trying to create currencies that can go against the dollar.
Trying to be a world power.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep. So that's what the BRICS stand for. Another question. So what does this mean for lower working classes in the U.S. if the value of the U.S. dollar went to nothing, aka held no value against other countries' currencies? Is that even possible that it can do that? Because you had mentioned before what value is. Value comes from us. So if we ask you, if you say, hey, how much is a dollar worth? A lot. What's a lot? A whole lot. Well, you can say, I can ask you, K. Fred, what you think about yourself? I'm good. Cutter, what you think about yourself? I'm the best. Okay. But you won't know that until you compare it against something else, which is why you have to value what you say you are against something else and then measure it accordingly. So with the dollar, it's never going to lose its value here. We think the dollar is the best thing since sliced bread, but when you compare it against other currencies, then it tells you what what it's compared to, what is it equal to. And that's what I'm saying. Will it ever go to zero? I mean, because is that even possible?
I don't think it'll ever go to zero, right? Because like I said, there's too many other factors that are involved. But I think that they will find a fair medium of exchange in between. Yeah.
Makes sense. Y'all got any questions on that one before I move to the next question?
No, go ahead, dude.
All right.
I'm just taking all this knowledge in. Go ahead.
So does a devaluation of money currency also mean that the value of the things we value will magically disappear? So if the money loses its value, does that mean Jordans are no longer worth anything to us?
I think that comes on like K. Fred was saying earlier, how much we're willing to pay for things. And we give things their value. And if I'm in a situation where I all the money that I'm making now does not afford me the things that it once afforded me, then I have to start prioritizing differently. So then, yeah, that will shut down corporations that aren't as really absolutely necessary.
Or what if they put you to work to produce products, goods, and services for other countries? What if America and China switched roles?
Right.
Dang. You mean,
like I said, it would bring us back to slavery. You don't own anything, you don't have anything, you're working for free. You have to in order for you to survive.
Well, is that any different? Because that's what we were before we started outsourcing in the 90s. We were the factories, the manufacturers. We were creating goods, but then they switched it.
The difference, I think, is our dollar was worth a little bit more. Like we were able to buy and purchase. If this whole idea of the Great Reset and you own nothing but you're happy is actually played out, then we wouldn't be working to own anything. We would just be working to live until we die, hopefully staying in the good standings of the people that's giving it to us.
And there's going to be rules with it.
Exactly.
There's going to be a system in place, and you follow the system, or they got them Walmart concentration camps, as the conspiracy theorists say, right? That's waiting on you. So that's entirely your choice. You can
because
choose,
you think about all these corporations and politicians that are in this whole development of this idea. We're looking at places like Walmart and Wells Fargo and, like you said, Vanguard and BlackRock. All of these people, and now you see the things that they're investing in. They're investing in collapsing the economy so that they can take more property. The more property that BlackRock owns, the more that they own, then the less that we own. So if a natural disaster happens and they go out and they say, no, this is uninhabitable, you can't live here, and they move everybody out of the area and they go in and they revitalize that area and now it belongs to them.
Well, the illusion of inclusion is great. They just include you into the economy. The best example I can give to that is how they did Black people during civil rights. At one point, Black people had their own economic power. Because segregation created that, right? You could only go to Black businesses, okay? And so you had an economic power. And I think that's what Martin Luther King was talking a lot about in some of his other speeches, was about the economic power that's within the Black community, and that needs to be recognized, right? So they figured, oh no, well, look, bring them on in. Let them be around white people, because now we can control everything, right? We can set up new type of Jim Crow laws, right, that we've been fighting for ever since. The police system has never changed when you talk about Black people. And remember, Black people were what, 1/3? So you were a commodity at one point as well. I think they were selling your ass too. At the end of the day, it's always been about what? Supply and demand. How many Negroes can I get to go till my field? Because if they till my field for free, that's free labor, right? I get the cotton, I get the corn, I get the product. And then what do I do with the product? I sell the product. That makes me money. That created generational wealth. Okay? Because they did that over a process economically of 400 years. So it's almost interesting going back to 1913. I think it was Wilson. I think he was the president at that time.
Yeah.
Man, that Federal Reserve, when they came in, they had been trying to get in for a minute into America, right? And those were the world bankers, right? And then once they infiltrated, well, that's what you saw happen, war after war. Why? Because they fund both sides. When you have war, what do they need? That's why they shoveling money to Ukraine, right? War
they need weapons.
What? The need for what? Products, goods, and services. And then they're not gonna stop, because what is defense? How do they make money in defense? By going to war. Some of this shit is common sense. But here's the funny thing. This is what I love about it. the double standard. I can't kill anybody, okay? Because I can go to jail for that, right? But it's okay if I go with an army, you know what I'm saying? Or a Marine, or this, that, and the other. Then it's okay. I'm all right. Sanction. But the act of, we all know, is wrong, right? But somehow we condone it around positions and labels. And I think, you know, that's the whole point of where we're at right now. We want you so misconstrued, talking about LGBTQs and all these social things that are just opinions of everybody, right? So that way you don't see what we're doing to you economically on the back end.
Damn.
Exactly.
So with the, what if, well, actually, I'm going with another one. How much wealth, aka assets, does one need to possess to be financially stable if the dollar lost its value?
Perspective. So if I go into Colombia, right? There's a money exchange right now on my currency. Okay, and I think it's like, I haven't looked at it in a minute. From what is it, $1 like 4,000 some odd, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the U.S. dollar holds weight right now, it's really good in other countries. Okay, that's where people go offshore. You know what I'm saying? That's where you have expats. That's where people are moving into different countries, right? Not saying you should move to Brazil, but you know.
Most of us, we don't make over $100,000. I looked it up. It was basically, I think, like 60% somewhere in there where people are under $100,000 for their salaries. That's what they're making, which goes into what they're having in the banks and the banking systems are under 250. FDIC, that federally insured insurance coverage that they give you for your deposits in there is $250,000. So outside of that, most of us don't have anything over that. That's the majority of the nation. That's why they set the amount at that level, because they know most people ain't got it like that. With that being said, since the lower classes, these middle to lower classes, are not making that much, why does it matter if we're all worker bees? And those who own our income, they own assets, which means we still gonna have work that's available to us. We're still gonna get paid. Why does it matter to those who are at the bottom?
It probably won't, other than the fact that your social system will change and kind of how you do things monetarily. I always say the interesting part is the illusion of the middle class. Okay. Because they make you think that the middle class is not poor. But to the rich, your ass is poor, right? Some people think $1 million is a lot of money. But put it in perspective. If I have a house that I get for $500,000 and I buy 2 cars at $50,000 a piece, that's $600,000. I only got $400,000 left. So was $1 million really a lot of money? You know what I mean? It's perspective. You know what I'm saying, Ephraim? And we talk about that. And then in turn, some people think that, you know, if I live in Arkansas, you know what I mean, and I'm kind of rural and my environment doesn't warrant me to get that type of money where, you know, 10,000 seems like a lot of money. But if I'm in Los Angeles, 10,000 is weekend money. Perspective.
I think too, it depends on how your comfortability level is. Like, how do you want to live? I used to do financial planning for, people. And a lot of times what someone wanted to have when they retire was a lot different than another person's because their lifestyle desires were different. So I think that if you're dealing with how much we would be affected and why the lower class or middle class would be affected in this way or that way, we have to consider how creative are you? Do you own any land that you can farm? I mean, how dependent are you on the government? Are you an independent person where you don't require much of the dollar bill to survive, or are you completely dependent on the government and their currency?
Makes sense. The just to close up, because I know we're winding down. This has been a great informative session. K. Fred, man, I appreciate it, bro. You put it down. I mean, everything
and you did it in layman's terms too. You did a good job, sir. Thank you.
K. Fred, appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I guess moving forward, this was a heavy topic. I'm glad we kind of nitpicked it through because I know it's so humongous. But I guess for viewers that do watch, my advice, and I'm sure K. Fred can follow up with the myth thing. What I did notice, when you have facts, you also have people that like to profit on fear mongering. That means that because this is such a big topic, you can throw everything in but the kitchen sink. You got all these beliefs, all these conspiracy theories all over the goddamn place. Everybody throwing everything in there. I mean, and if you don't understand the basics and the fundamentals of it, you'll get swept up and you'll be feared, and then you'll have a January 6th. Because you got people that believe, because what they're teaching you is that what we do know is that the fear mongering is not for people of color, not black folk. We already understand fear. We live in fear. What it is that white folk get scared because they're teaching them somebody's going to reduce you to the state of people of color, Negroes. AKA, we're going to release the slaves, or AKA, you're going to lose your white privilege. It's all going to go away if this happens. And next thing you know, you have a whole bunch of people that are in fear for something that doesn't exist. But
like Y2K.
Exactly. All of it. And that's what I did. It's like, it's two different perspectives in the society, and it's a shame it's that way, but white folks see it differently than black folk because we live a different reality than they do in the society. So that's what I would say. Just folks, be careful. Don't run, due to what you think may happen because everybody's talking about it's happening. You get swept up. So yeah, what do you think about? I'm sure I'll let you close up with that. Okay, Fred.
Oh man, my biggest thing is they used to say if you want to hide something, put it in a book, right? Reading and researching, never believe me. You know what I mean? I'll give you keywords, man. You can go research, right? And depending on how far you dig, see what you'll find. I think, unfortunately, this is the way it's been for quite a long time. It's a system, like you said, that's been in place for well over 100 years now, since 1913, right? We're well past that. You're not going to get around it, but to understand it, to understand your strength in it, I think is what I like to promote. Do the research. If you don't know about investing, go read about it. Go look it up. What are these things you're already in? Your 401ks, your IRAs, your life insurance. Learn about these things. Learn about real estate. Learn about bonds. Learn about the market. Go look at the NASDAQ or the Dow. What is it there? What are derivatives? You know what I mean? What are all these words that they say when you hear it? Go look it up. It'll shed light to a whole lot of things that are coming. So I appreciate platforms like this, Ephraim, where we can kind of educate, throw some things out there for people to go do their own research.
Definitely. So panel, man, appreciate the input. Thanks for another episode of Concrete Reality TV. You guys tuning in. You know what you got to do. You got to like, you got to subscribe. We're trying to grow this thing so we can continue to bring you great content like we do. So again, y'all have a good evening and peace.